no!
Hey everybody, it's Andy Kushner, host of The Wedding Biz, and this is another episode of The Next Level, the show in which a guest co-host and I discuss the most recent interview and kind of bring out a few of the key topics and deliver them in a way that you can use as specific tactical strategies to help bring your business to the next level. And as you all have been noticing, we are now releasing The Next Level on Wednesdays instead of Mondays because we want you to have a chance to listen to the regular interview for a couple days, have a chance to get to it, which is released Monday, and then Wednesday we release this. So we're going to see how that goes for a period of time. So before I introduce today's interview, as well as the guest co-host, I want to mention last week's, if you missed it, it was Julie Novak, CEO and founder of Party Slate. And we talked about a lot of real cool topics, including one that hasn't really come up on the show very much, which is about raising venture capital. So if you want to hear more about that and other things that Julie had to say, please listen to last week. It was really wonderful. And so today we are fortunate to have as a guest co-host the esteemed Sean Lowe. Sean's consulting firm, The Business of Being Creative, is focused on providing practical advice to those in the business of being creative. And Sean has consulted for a slew of professionals in the industry, including well-known ones. And we have had an outrageous conversation, several actually. Sean has been on a few The Next Level episodes, and I also interviewed him last year, February 19th of 2018. You should check out that interview. So Sean, welcome to the show. I appreciate you helping me out today.
No, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you again.
Yeah, and you know what? I am going to New York City in a week. I am so excited. I am going to be interviewing for the second time Colin Cowie, and also I'm going to be seeing David Stark. Both of those are second-time interviews. And I know, Sean, you've heard them both speak at Engage, and they have so much to give and to offer. I'm so excited to go more in depth with both of them.
Oh, those will be just great interviews again. And I love the idea of having a follow-on with them. It's going to be just wonderful. They're both remarkable talents.
Yeah, it's really fun. You know, I've had the show now for like a year and a half, and I am starting to do these second rounds. Did one with Preston Bailey, which we released late last year, Cindy Novotny, which is going to come out soon. And so, yeah, and I love doing it because we can, you know, take things to a whole nother place. And this morning's guest who we're going to be talking about, the interview, is Lynn Easton, which is a second interview, a part two. And Lynn created Easton Destination Events, a luxury destination wedding design and planning company that works worldwide with offices in Charlottesville, Virginia, and Charleston, South Carolina. I went to see her at her office in Charlottesville, which is at one of her beautiful venues, Pippin Hill. Lynn is a very popular planner and designer amongst the industry as well, speaking around the country at various conferences. So it was very exciting to sit down with her. And in terms of some topics that grabbed my attention that I wanted to talk with you about, Sean, is first of all, I mean, she talks about that her signature is that no event looks the same. And one of the ways that she accomplishes that, probably a very big way, is how she likes to pick what she calls the right team for each client. So she's creating a completely different team for every single client. Now, she did say that she has, you know, like 10 favorite photographers and, you know, who also give diversity to her portfolio as well. And all these different, you know, vendors, partners, I like to call them. And that it's not just their creative talent, but it's also, and I thought this was really interesting, it's matching up their personality with the client. And I thought that was interesting, like what makes the clients most comfortable?
Oh, I think that's one of her biggest strengths is in probably her genius is the idea of understanding, as she, you know, gives the example of the couple where, you know, they wanted to just have a lot of fun with it, even though that she was talking about from Texas. And it really is about personality. It really is about that emotional connection. And I loved what she said when she was talking about, well, you know, that at her level of luxury, at her level of talent, that it's expected that the people that are going to do the work are incredibly capable. So it's really about, can there be an emotional fit, a spiritual fit to get the work done in a way that's going to be meaningful to everybody and create a better experience for everybody. And I think her desire to make that connection happen as a, you know, above and apart from, you know, the creative style, you know, one's doing whatever style the wedding is going to be, but really finding that underneath is not just that creative style, but also that way of working style that's going to be fitting to the client that's in front of her. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it really goes with her whole concept of high touch. You know, it is taking it to that next level. And, I know that a lot of us in the business have our favorites. I am not a planner designer, but I work with a ton. And I know that there are certain people they really love to have. But if you can afford the luxury of having choices and being able to provide that option for clients, and again, it also obviously it helps make sure that the event is going to be very different than any other. It makes me think too about timelines. She and I did not discuss this, but I'm sure that every timeline she does is also completely different, completely customized to the client. And I noticed there are, some planners out there who will have a template. And I understand that for some people that works for them, but I would really encourage everybody to consider even just the timeline, which to me is the kind of heart and soul of the party, right? It determines the flow, and little changes in it can make a big, I know for me, for my music company, Cushioner Entertainment, it makes a big difference when I can have some input or at least talk about it, because little subtle touches can make a very big difference. And it's all based on the client, who they are, their personality, their vision, and also the planner's vision. I mean, the vision should be different for each person. So why wouldn't the timeline? So it kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah. And I also want to say, exactly that. And also that, I think Lynn, she was talking about that trip that she took to Morocco with all the, with David Beam and Brian Raffles and and Marcy Blum and many others, and Michelle Rago. And what she was saying is that, that she is in where she is because she was in Charlottesville, that she doesn't have that broad of a selection like someone who's in an urban area, so that she's not doing all different kinds of weddings. And I want to, take a little bit of issue with that in the sense of saying, I love what she's about, right? It's like she said, hashtag Easton Bride, right? That she knows who her people are. She knows, what they're about. So she's starting from this baseline of really understanding them. So then when she goes and customizes the timeline, as you're talking about, nothing is going to be templated, right? However, she's starting at such a baseline of understanding who they are because, she knows what they care about because they care about what she cares about, right? It's a Seth Godin line. People like us do things like this, and Lynn lives that. And I think that was just a remarkable place. And I think something that all of your listeners can pay attention to, because there's that side of not wanting to be everything to everybody, but really being specific as to what matters to her, that level of detail, the level of relationship, the level of connection. And therefore, she can create these remarkable timelines, and she would never do a template. But it's all starting as, I don't know what you think, Andy, but just like having that ability to really, understand who's in front of you and really craft something that she with 100% certainty knows that they're going to care about.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's the bottom line. And, before we move on from this topic, I also want to mention how much I enjoyed being that I am, again, not going to call it vendor, I want to say partners, but that I'm in that part of the business. She talks about how the creatives, the partners she works with, are really most important to her. And she said, look, if every creative brings their A game, that's what makes it so successful for their clients. And so she talks about honoring us and taking care of us. And she also said, look, hire the best creatives you can find and then listen to them. And that's another thing too, is that, most of the people I work with, very fortunate, they do come and ask me, hey, what do you think? And I'm not going to step on their toes, but when they ask me what I think, it gives me an opportunity to talk about all I live, breathe, and eat, which for me is music. And I love that. And she was very open and brought that up. And I love that she said that.
Oh, I think it's great. I think that it's so many layers that, we can just tap into a few of them. It's like, one, it's not about money for her, right? She's not going to hire somebody who's just because they're $1 cheaper. It's not important to her, which I think is wonderful, right? Because how can you expect, if you're going to take every dollar away from your partner and expect their A game, it's like saying, here, put two hands behind your back and still do great. And she's not doing that. And I think that what she says is that I'll get you what you need, but I expect genius. And I love that, because you're right, Andy, what you do and as on your music side is just focus on obsessively what entertainment is, right? And, every professional that's just totally obsessed with what they're doing, getting the opportunity to do what they do, organized so that there's a fluidity to it, which is what Lynn's role is, right? I love to say, you can have two amazing horses, but they need to be running in the same direction, or else they could be running in opposite directions and no one's going to get anywhere, right? So Lynn's job is to make sure everybody's going in the right place. But beyond that, she's like, let them run. And I love that idea of freedom to a creative. And that is what she's looking for in her recommendation. And that's why she's doing that. And I think that paying attention to that subtlety is such a wonderful place to just focus on what she's talking about.
I have something really special to talk about. It's our sponsor for today, and believe me, we check them out thoroughly. We don't just take anyone. So I want to say that if you need more presence in the market and you're wondering how to accomplish that, you need to check out OFD Consulting. They are an award-winning publicity agency that focuses on the wedding industry. Their client portfolio ranges from top-tier planners and venues to well-regarded national brand and industry thought leaders. OFD Consulting has placed clients in a slew of popular online and offline publications, and they also have a service dedicated entirely to B2B press. So for those looking to elevate your brand reputation among peers through online mentions, guest articles, podcasts, and speaking engagements, you've got to contact them. And one more piece of information I want to tell you, that if you are a small business, and most of us are, and you want to dip your toes in the PR waters, check out the OFD Collective, which is a 3-tier membership with robust educational and coaching opportunities along with ongoing press leads. So check out ofdconsulting.com. And to move on to another topic, I want to just spend a little bit of time on this because I want to leave enough time for us, Sean, to talk about pricing that she brought up, because that's a real hot topic. But before we get there, we also talked about creating legacy clients and talked more about her whole concept of high touch, which I absolutely love. I'll never forget. And I probably brought this up in the first interview with her, but I remember hearing her talk about, I think it was at Engage, she was talking an example of high touch, how during the later part of a dancing set, when it's, one of those really wild dance parties toward the end of the night, how she'll have waiters all come out at one time, with silver platters and white gloves. And they've got this, I hope I'm saying this correctly, Lynn, they've got, a dampened with a little bit of a nice scent to it, these washcloths or cloths. So, and they go out onto the floor and they hand them to people when they're sweating in the middle of it. And I thought that was brilliant. And she told another story, which we got into more here, was that about how she has a beautiful frame that she gets ahead of time from where the venue is. And she has a picture. She has it worked out with the photographer ahead of time so that everything's done, so that when the couple gets into their room after the party, there's a beautiful picture of the two of them waiting for them. I mean, can you imagine? And one more I want to say before I turn it to you is that she said during the holidays, around Christmas time, she'll send all the brides of the year a nice, just, we are so happy to have had you and so honored to be on the journey with you. And there's no agenda for future business. That's the key thing. And I just love that. And that gets people to feel closer to you, right? And want to stay with you.
Yeah, I think that what's really fascinating. And so it came out last year, but I'm just reading it, is the Heath brothers have written a book about moments and how that what makes a moment. What makes you think about what just happened and what creates that memory that's an indelible memory. And Lynn's got it in spades. Like, she understands that it's the moments that people remember. You could have, this huge overarching experience and you'll just remember the one thing. And I think, way back when I ran a, food delivery business, we would give away, just because we wanted to give something away, we gave away a blow pop, right? And it became the thing we were known for, right? And it's like, did you get your blow pop? And people would walk around the next day and had, the blow pop. And it was like, we did all this work, we touched on so many different things. And the one thing they remembered was that one moment, the blow pop, right? And so, which is funny, but you think about what Lynn's doing is she's just taking that idea, what the Heath brothers talk about in their book, and just taking that moment and that idea and understanding that that's what creates memory. As she said, the months and months and months of work that went into making this whole night happen over hours and hours. And she understands it boils down to, a series of moments, and that she can capture, whether that's like the picture that she was talking about or the gift or whatever it would be. It's a moment. She's awesome at it.
Yeah. And this certainly isn't the reason for doing it. It also turns into a branding opportunity too, in a sense. And one more point about it before we move on, that I love this, is that she loves social media because it allows her to keep up with her clients, with the relationships. I mean, that's a company like mine. I can't do that. It's too many. But, certainly I love the idea. I think she averages, or maybe this next year, well, not sure the number of weddings she does, but I love that concept of following her clients, staying in touch with them through that platform. So in terms of moving on to this big sensitive topic in the industry, pricing comes up all the time. And she was talking about the concept of percentage versus a flat fee. And the issue is that, as we all know, I mean, some weddings start at one scale and sometimes later turns and ramps up, and it's hard to reprice it. It's also hard to have to discuss your pricing again with an existing client. And so for her, doing this percentage concept is a way to handle that.
Yeah, I think, look, I mean, she's not alone in trying to do that and trying to solve what I think is a bigger problem in the industry, which is, we have, the answer to whether you can get it for less is always yes, right? You can, of course, get from point A to point B in, your clunker, whatever that might be. I'm not going to name a car. Or you can get there, in a Bentley that costs $350,000. Both of them are going to get you from point A to point B. Except a Bentley, I just looked this up. I think it's a remarkable stat. It takes 150 hours just to stitch the interior. That's almost a month just to stitch one car. And so the question is like, who cares about that? Well, a Bentley owner does, right? And so the idea of it is we as an industry are still so struggling with, what is it that you want? Do you want a Bentley or do you want a clunker, right? Because the answer is they're both going to get you to point A to point B. They're just not the same thing. And so what Lynn is trying to do, and so many others are trying to say, hey, wait a second, if you came in and wanted one thing, but then you wound up wanting another, right? Who's that on? Partly it's on us because we didn't do a good job of saying, here's what that's going to cost, but partly it's on you because you have the wherewithal to say, well, we didn't want that, we want this, right? And so now we're in this awkward situation of having to, have a different event, right? That is now time constrained, because we haven't changed the date, we just changed what it is, right? And so how do you do that? And I think, look, a percentage is definitely the way to do it. But the part that I want to say that Lynn that undercuts all of that and makes Lynn successful at it where others aren't, is that she has a very, very candid, transparent way of being, right? So she's not about sending the energy, well, we're going to start at 10, but we'll probably wind up at 100, right? That's not what she's doing. She's saying, we're happy to do the 10. And then they come back and say, we'll do 100. And she just happens to have a mechanism to get herself compensated for the idea that it's a whole lot more work to do the 100 than it is to do 10. So it's this whole thing where it's not just about charging a percentage, because that, I wish that Lynn had fleshed it out a little bit more. That is not what she's really talking about. What she's talking about is the ability to be totally candid, totally upfront with what it costs, right? And know that it is very expensive what she's doing. And that if they change their mind, whoever they are, and can change fundamentally what she's doing, she just happens to have a mechanism to do it. And I think that that's a huge deal. I don't know what you think about it, because I know that people want to have a cheat, right? Where, hey, if they change the budget, then I have my percentage to cover me. And I think that that's not a very healthy way to be. And she's not saying that, actually. What she's saying is that, yes, she has the mechanism to cover it, but it only works because she's so forthright and transparent about what she's doing every step of the way, right?
Well, yes. And that's a very key thing, is that she says to the clients, you're going to see all the contracts, you're going to sign them. And so she is completely transparent. And I remember Colin Cowie, he had spoken at Engage. I think we covered it in the first interview with him. And if not, I'm going to check. I'll definitely bring it up with the second. But he also said the same thing. It's like a book, of itemized, so that, people, the client sees it. It creates this sense of trust. And if anything, people are even more comfortable spending more, because that's kind of what happens, because there is this trust and it's completely transparent. There's no concern, And I also want to clarify for people that she mentioned, in terms of what is the percentage on, it's not technically on everything. It's on everything that they manage, everything that she has to put work into, like, for example, floral, the music, the photography, videographer, and anything having to do with decor as well. But she pointed out not hotels. Like, often, at her level, there's a travel partner negotiating for them. And again, at an elite level, it should be all about the best fit for the client, not the money.
Yeah, well, I think that's a huge deal. And if you think about kind of that adds even more context to what I was talking about, right? Because in every way, she's involved with that travel company. In every way, she's helping. I mean, Lynn owns hotels, as we all know, right? So she completely understands what that is about and yet chooses not to make her money there. And I think that that's, a testament to what she's talking about is like, no, that's handled by a travel company. Even though we're involved, it's not a place we feel comfortable making money. And that's a big deal because it's a whole lot of money. I think that lends sometimes, leaving proverbial meat on the bone in because of what you feel to be the right thing to do is the right answer, right? Getting every last, dollar you can work for some people, but it's really great to hear that she's not doing that.
Yeah. Well, that is all the time that we do have for today. I want to thank everyone for listening to The Next Level. Be sure to check out Lynn's website at eastonevents.com. Again, eastonevents.com, and also her social media handle is Easton Events. Also want to thank you, Sean, for being on the show again.
Welcome.
Yep, always love sharing your wisdom. Sean's website can be found at thebusinessofbeingcreative.com. Again, thebusinessofbeingcreative.com, and check out his blog. It's wonderful. And of course, our website, theweddingbiz.com. And also our network, theweddingbiznetwork.com, with Julie Sabatino, the stylish bride. Be sure to check that out. If anyone has any questions or suggestions for a guest who I interview, feel free to write me, Andy@theweddingbiz.com. Again, Andy@theweddingbiz.com. And next week, we're going to be releasing, actually, it's kind of me. Let me explain. I've had requests from people, why don't you get interviewed and tell your story and all of that? And, maybe someday we'll do that. But I thought for now, because I'm in the middle of so much travel going to New York City to interview people, I'm also then going to San Francisco, a lot going on here. So I'm going to release what I thought ended up being a pretty interesting podcast interview by Mary Swaffield of the podcast Wedpreneur. And what I found was that her questioning process, it was cool. It gave me a chance to think about and to verbalize, summing up what some of the biggest threads are that I've experienced from all these incredible guests that I've interviewed in the past year and a half. It was fairly recent. So that's what we're going to release next week. Probably will not be a next level with it. I don't think I want to talk about myself on the next level, but be sure to tune in next week and catch that. I think you'll have fun with it. So thanks again, everyone, for listening to The Next Level. And this is The Wedding Biz.